Last verse. Chapter 8 and Mark, verse 38. Yay! Wow, what a chapter. I always say that, don't I? Every chapter, every verse is so good. Well, he says in this place, he says, whoever therefore, and that word therefore is therefore, because of the other verses right before it, where he says, what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? What shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Then he says, whosoever therefore, in other words, is connected there, whoever therefore shall be ashamed of me. Are you ashamed of Jesus? We'll get into what that kind of means in a little bit. Whoever shall be ashamed of me and of my words. So if you've got Jesus, you've got to have his words, because a person is his words. That explains his thoughts, his personality, his opinions. That's part of that person. This book isn't Jesus, but it isn't God the Father. But I'll tell you what, it certainly brings out who he is. And he expresses himself all over this place of this. You know, he spoke through prophets and apostles and all. So it says, whoever therefore shall be ashamed of me, about me right there, and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation. Now, when it says this adulterous and sinful generation, definitely talking about, well, at least initially, those people in the first century. He says it over and over, by the way, in various passages. Matthew has like 5 times or something. Well, it's quite a bit of times. He talks about this is what's going to happen to this generation, woe unto this generation, and all that. But anyway, whoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation. And we'll get to the shame in a second. But adultery has to do with, do I have I have someone right here. I have one of my families here. I'll go ahead and get the father out. Yep, this is a dude right here. Okay. And then let's just get his wife out. Oh, here she is right here. So we have the father and the mother. Okay. And they're kind of married here. Yay. Don't kiss, not in front of everybody. So here they are. Now, an adulterous relationship is where either she or he, we'll use him in this case, he says he loves his wife and all, but he goes out and finds another woman, and he, spends the night with her, hangs out with her like that's his wife, treats her like that's his wife. Not good. Adulterous. Okay, or she does it with her against her husband. It happens nowadays. It's really super sad. It's a heartbreak to God. It's a heartbreak to the other person. It's just really, really, really horrible. So now, why is Jesus using that marriage reference about this marriage reference? Excuse me. About him and his words and this generation? Well, what he's really saying is you should be married to God in a sense. It's just a picture here. It's the closest relationship a person can have with another person, husband and wife. It's holy, sacred, special. It's really a beautiful commitment to each other for life, till death do us part, So if you sin against God and you're doing whatever you want and you're ashamed of him and all that, you've basically broken the heart of God, and you've provoked him to jealousy over you. Because, if you're a Christian, you belong to him. The people of God are his, just like these two belong to each other. Okay, right here. Whoops, sorry. Right here. They belong to each other, and they love each other. But it's like you go off and have an affair with a man, or having a relationship with another woman, then basically you're breaking that covenant, or it's really a serious, serious thing. The Bible talks about it a lot, by the way, a divorce and all that. But anyway, God hates divorce. By the way, there is a time for it and all that. It's really a heartbreak to God, but God does not like putting away. He hates it, it says, in Malachi chapter 2, by the way, in that book. All right. So when you're united with God, you should have a marriage type relationship. You're in union with him, and you shouldn't be loving other things before God. Like adulterous relationship is idols, like things that take the rightful place of God, the right place of God. So keep that in mind. Then he says sinful generation, just practices sin. Sinful means that. So let's read it again. Whoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous this sinful generation. And I don't think, by the way, he's talking about just that, but he's really specifically in that place talking about this generation, all his peers around him, the contemporary people. He says, of him shall the Son of Man be ashamed. Now, I love this because it says, he says, whoever therefore shall be ashamed of me, then he says, of him shall the Son of Man be ashamed. Now, Jesus right here is actually putting Son of Man and me together. So this is a great place where it shows the Son of Man is not someone else he's talking about. He's talking about him. And if you've been with me for a good while, you remember that Son of Man, that phrase, is in Daniel chapter 7. And it's a major passage, and it definitely talks about somebody who is going to be reigning forever, ruling forever, has glory and all that, which is Jesus Christ right there. That's the Son of Man. At least we know it from here, from these passages. He called himself Son of Man over and over and over. I have a mention, 81 times in the gospel. 81 times it's in the Gospels that it's said that. So, yeah, pretty amazing. Okay, so it's his favorite phrase about himself. And it says, me and Son of Man, which puts it together, which the Son of Man is me, which is Jesus, which is the Messiah. That beautiful, beautiful figure in Daniel 7, that's him. He's really identifying himself. It's the first time he's really doing a self-identification that he is that in Mark. Now, later he does it in Mark 14 or something, I think. When he's before the high priest. And all right, let's go on. Whoever shall therefore be ashamed of me and my words, I am not ashamed of Jesus, and we should never be ashamed of Jesus. We should not deny him at all. Well, I've got really quickly some ways to show whether you're ashamed of him or I'm ashamed of him. Are you ashamed of Jesus? Here are ways that kind of show that you're ashamed of him. Number one, well, if you're new to Christ and you don't have much knowledge yet, then you can't really talk you could talk about him all the time, but you don't have a whole lot to share, but that's okay. When I was a beginning Christian, I didn't know much at all, but I talked about him. So really, ways to be ashamed of Jesus is you don't talk about him. Like, you don't really mention him that much. I think that's a shame. I think you're ashamed of him. Because if you have somebody you really love and you have a relationship with someone, then you talk about that person to other people. You say, my mom's great, or my brother's really cool. Like, I talk about my brothers all the time, and all. My mom and dad are past, they're ceased, and I talk about them sometimes. But my brothers, I talk about all three of them all the time. I have three brothers, awesome brothers. But anyway, and I'm not ashamed of them at all. Like, they're great. So how much more do I talk about Jesus? Way more, by the way. I talk about Jesus and way more than anybody else in my life. Who do you talk about? What do you talk about? So if you don't ever talk about him, it's like you don't really have a real close relationship with him, and you should be talking about him like all the time. So you need to get around. Don't be ashamed of him. Not those who don't talk about him. So it's sort of ashamed of him. You should share him. You should not be embarrassed. Should not be awkward. May feel awkward in the beginning because you're new or something, but get over that real quick. He is worth your devotion. He is worth you talking about, man. You need to talk about it all the time. Another way of being ashamed of Jesus is you don't stand up for him. For a person not to stand up for him is a shame. Like, you need to stand up. If someone is talking really ill about Jesus, like really bad things and saying something, so that's not what Jesus is like, you guys. I know Jesus and he's wonderful. He's great. He's God and all that. So definitely you're going to stand up for him. You're not going to just say nothing and let them just tear him down or whatever. Use his name as a cuss word and all that. No good, not good. Though another way of showing how you're ashamed of Jesus, if a person is ashamed of Jesus, is not live right for his sake. A person who does not live right for his sake, they're not living right. They're not living for him. Like, you should live right all the time. Talk righteously, live right, and all that. And why? For his sake. You do it for him. That's why if you're not doing it, if you're not living right, then you must be ashamed of him. Like, I love God, and I'm going to try and live right every second of every day. Sure, I'll blow it here and there, but my heart is to live right as perfectly as I can. And that's because don't want to be ashamed of him. He's worth living for. His commandments are great. His laws are good. His values are good. His opinions are good. They're right. And so I want to live right. The next one, another way of showing that you're ashamed of Jesus is it's sort of this one, but this is just talking about him. Man, Jesus is wonderful and all. But this one is preaching and sharing him and his gospel with other people. You're trying to get them saved. That shows that you're not ashamed of him. I mean, he died on the cross for you. You should be sharing that wonderful love that put him on the cross with everyone. If you're not, what are you ashamed of him? You don't really care about what he did for you? That's not good. So a person who's not ashamed of him is going to preach. They're going to proclaim. You're going to share and try and get others saved. Next one is people don't know that you're a Christian. If you say that you love Jesus and you're a Christian and you don't let everybody know it, then I think you're ashamed of Jesus. It's a form of I'm kind of ashamed. I don't want everybody to know. Well, you say, well, I'm ashamed of myself. Sure, you could be ashamed of yourself for sins, but that doesn't mean you stop there and let that hide you from the world and hide him from the world. You're going to show him off. You're going to talk about it. And you're going to let other people know that you're Christian. Like if I were to somehow meet your friends or your relatives and all, and I got them all together, and let's say I pick out 20 people. I say, well, what do you think about this such and such person? I'll use my name, Gordon. What do you think about Gordon and all? And then they say that one of the first things that should come into their lips right away, he's a Christian or she's a Christian. Yeah, it's the number one thing in your life. If Jesus Christ is not the number one thing in your life, then you're ashamed of him. And you really are. He should be number one in your life. You should really show that and share it. And so if people don't know that you're a Christian, you're hiding him. You're hiding that relationship. And that's kind of awkward. Like if I'm about to get married or something and I hide this female friend and all, and I don't want anybody to know that we're getting married and all that. I'm not talking about eloping or something quick. What I'm talking about is I keep her away from everyone, and I don't want anybody to know about her or my relationship with her. I'm ashamed of it. I'm embarrassed to be with her. Not good. Another thing, another way to be ashamed of Jesus is you suffer. A person who doesn't want to be ashamed of Jesus is they suffer and take things on his behalf. A person who decides, I'm going to suffer and take things on his behalf. I could have said not suffer and take things on his behalf, really, right? To be ashamed. But the point is, you just take things. You suffer. You turn the other cheek, and people steal from you. You don't ask for it back, and it's just a wonderful life of holiness and humbleness, and being very humble before God and loving him and loving people. You're basically you're willing to take things on the behalf of others. In other words, take things. People are mean to you. Just take insults. Insult back. You just do what Jesus said. You follow his example. And he said, if people revile, which means to insult you, you don't insult back. If people, hurt you and all, you don't hurt them back. You don't repay evil for evil. So there you go. That's suffer and take things on his behalf. Another way of being ashamed of Jesus is not being like him. I'm putting it in the positive right now. You could put not be like him. Not love like him. So a positive, if I flip it over, the way to be not be ashamed is to be like him and to love like him and to talk like him and to act like him and to pray like him and all those wonderful things that we should be like Jesus. And if you're not really becoming like Jesus, you're not loving like him, you're ashamed of how he loves people, you're embarrassed about that, that's awkward. You need to do the same, that he did. So that's a good one. Fear what people think of you. If you're ashamed of him, then you fear what people think of you. You should not be afraid of what people think of you. You should not be afraid of people, really. The only one we should have a fear of is God. Like he deserves respect and fear. But fear what people think of you is showing that you're concerned about their opinions of you, what they think of you, if you're a Christian and all that. And not good, not good. You need to not care about what other people think of you. All right, next one is another way to show that you're ashamed of Jesus is you laughed at nasty jokes and your actions. You laughed at people's actions, how they're behaving. If it's foolish, it's evil, and you're laughing at it, you make light of it, then you're ashamed of Jesus. You definitely are ashamed. You should not be any bad stuff, like laughing at nasty jokes or things like that. You have nothing to do with, because you love Jesus and you don't want to be. It's a kind of a shaming him. The Bible says it this way: the world tends to blaspheme and speak evil of God because of Christians. Now it talks about Jewish people in that passage, but it's us too. Like, people should look at you and see Jesus, and you act like him, you think like him, you talk like him, and you don't laugh at stuff that's evil. You don't think it's funny, all that. That's not being ashamed of Jesus. But if you're doing what the world does, you're kind of ashamed of Jesus. If he stood there right by you and you laughed at some of the jokes, shouldn't you be embarrassed that you're laughing at him because Christ is there? But if you decide not to laugh, Jesus is here and I'm on his side and not yours. That's the idea. Okay, and then the last one about ways to be ashamed of Jesus is to not die for him. He's worth it. In other words, if a person decides to not die for him and they don't want to die because, you don't really want to die, but you're willing to have somebody take your life for you, like in other people's lands, they're ready to kill you. And if you've got to deny Jesus, say, I'm not going to deny Jesus because I'm not ashamed of Jesus. I'm willing to die for him. Hope you got something out of this. God bless you. Thanks.